Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Show here on 1360 WLBK, DeKalb County's news and information station, a show that sheds a little light on the darkness of suicide. With us, as always, Citizen Mike. How are you doing there, sir?
I'm fabulous, and I am enjoying this, what people would call a beautiful day, but it's a warm day early in the spring, and it just kind of brings me an extra step in my spirit.
And we should say we're taping this on Thursday afternoon. It's a beautiful afternoon. And speaking of beautiful, on the line with us right now, Tamara Sutton, all the way from the great state of Michigan. Tamara, how you doing?
Hello to my boys.
And, of course, we're missing one of the boys today. Chuck Seabrass, all our hopes and prayers are with Chuck.
Yes, they are.
Getting some medical attention much needed. So we will press on. But Chuck, as always, is in our thoughts. And I was telling you guys as we talk a little bit before we start the show when we tape it on Thursday afternoons, this literally just came over the wire, an unfortunate story, but a story I have to share nonetheless. Officials at West Suburban Juvenile Correction Facility are investigating a rash of suicide attempts among inmates. 3 girls have attempted suicide at the Illinois Youth Center in Warrenville recently, and one is in very critical condition. A spokesman for the Illinois Department of Corrections says the facility is safe and the problems are not related to staffing, but a union that represents the workers there is upset for what they call decreased staffing levels, and they claim recent cuts have led to numerous problems between the staff and the detainees. And of course, Tamara, we always call this opening segment Tamara's Highlights, but I know this literally just coming over the wire. I thought we would use this as a stepping stone here to talk about suffering in general, but about this specific event in particular.
Yes, I'm really glad to speak to this. There are many wise and enlightened people on this world of ours that have often said in a variety of ways that only at times of great darkness do we become aware of the light within. And a friend of mine, Thich Nhat Hanh, says, what we do with it determines our potential for joy. And what I really like about that is that every being on this planet is suffering some challenge, some pain, something that they didn't anticipate or ask for in their lives. And it arrives in their laps, whether they like it or not. And their lives are changed forever because of that challenge. What we do with it, however, determines what it's going to do for us. And it can be in a positive way, even though feeling this pain, feeling this suffering can be so imposing. It can cause us to feel buried by it and buried so deeply that there is darkness. And when it's difficult to see the light above you or around you, all you feel you have the choice to do is to feel the pain. So what I'm proposing is the very possibility that you can take this pain of yours in this very specially tailored journey of yours, and you can use it to open your eyes, to become awake, to feel the pain and acknowledge it. Look at where it's coming from. Our natural, just as human beings, the natural thing to do is when you reach out and something is hot is to pull back. And what I have to ask you to do, though, in this kind of case, and that is whether or this is a loss of someone that you love, or whether it is something that you have suffered in the way of a betrayal or an abuse or a disappointment so great that you feel your spirit crumbling a bit. And what I would put to you is that you can take that challenge and you can look at it closely. Rather than pulling back, lean into it and ask it to teach you something that you didn't know before. When you ask, open your eyes and keep your eyes open because the answer will come. It is out there. It is in front of you somewhere. The hardest thing is for us to actually see our answers to our questions. Answers to our prayers even, yes. So what you do by this is that you are more than willing then to put yourself in a position of saying, okay, this is part of my life. This this death, this loss, this abuse, this whatever it is that hurts so much, and allow yourself to rise up rather than letting it bury you down. There are things that happen in our bodies, and I know Michael can speak to this, that change our chemistry, the chemicals in our bodies, just by giving us that sense of feeling buried and feeling our actual spirits being compressed. Michael, do you agree?
Well, actually, Tamara, Citizen Mike could agree with you. And but before we actually even get into that, I want to reinforce what you're saying. And the thought that occurred to me is I would hope that at some time there would be people in jails and prisons that would hear this message, this very broadcast. Because I can imagine very few other places on this earth darker than being in jail, being in prison. The whole milieu, as they say, or the whole society associated with that is very oppressive. And in very oppressive environments, we experience that darkness. And that it is that oppressive environment that also contributes to people experiencing acute depression leading to suicide completion. And I can imagine no or few more difficult places to find oneself and be surrounded by that type of darkness. And then in this story, the other piece that's sad for me is these are our children. These are our children. Now, I didn't give birth to them, and you didn't give birth to them. Somebody did, and yet they are our children in a youth facility because they have done something that is inappropriate in society, and they are surrounded by that darkness. They are surrounded by people who have silenced their voice, people who have abused their bodies, people who have neglected them, people who have, in one moment or another, taken a portion of their life, their soul, their existence away from them, so that the primary way they know how to express themselves at this time is one where they find themselves in jail. And these are our children, surrounded by that darkness. And in what Tamara is saying, I would hope that those, if there's anyone who has the opportunity and is incarcerated now to hear this, to hear that message that in that darkness there is a ray of light. There is a ray of light. And that light, in some sense, represents life itself, where the darkness represents death and destruction. And that when we find ourselves in those positions, and I would imagine, I do not even have to say I would imagine because actually I have observed it, being in prison or jail 24 hours a day, there is this darkness that surrounds a person. And they are struggling to stay alive. And in that, there are people who find themselves at a place where they will attempt to take their life. And what we're trying to say is, even though you've been in that place, you still have some light in you. As long as you are living and breathing, you are generating some type of light, some type of energy. And if you seek the light and that energy, which will help open your eyes so that you can see the pieces around you that are threatening you and become more mindful of operating in the light, then you may stand a chance to be able to rise above that darkness which contributes to the sense of suffering that you're experiencing.
You know, and if I'd like to mention, too, because, Tamara, I like you're talking about the light within. I saw a movie not too long ago called Hurricane about Reuben Carter, an actual true story about a man who was incarcerated wrongly.
Yes.
And there were times in the film where he was actually put in a room pitch black, totally dark, so he couldn't read. There was no, and just had to turn within himself. And I remember watching the film, just getting crazy just trying to imagine what that would be like to be in a room with no light, no nothing, totally your own mind. It was controlled. And obviously, Tamara, he was able to reach in and find that light within himself, and not only bettered himself, but he bettered a young man that he started corresponding with and helped him out as well. But I remember just watching the movie, just being so overwhelmed by that feeling of what it must be like to be in this darkened room 23 hours of the day. I think he got out to go to dinner or whatever it was, but you'd have to find that inner light, or you wouldn't be able to survive.
You have no choice but to find it within you, because it's not outside of you. It's not outside of you, and it's that grace that we all crave in our lives and are many times lacking, that you will, in this situation, certainly will only find within you, more than likely.
And that's so important, because, yes, you'll find it within you, and as frightening and disturbing as that scene is in jail, it is one of the safest places to be. Because
how do you mean that?
Because in jail, you're describing a situation where you're in solitude and you're in physical darkness. And that would be inappropriate and unethical by today's standards. But the point is, it is solitude and you're in physical darkness. When you step out of solitary confinement and into the general population in a jail and in a prison, you have more threats to your physical, emotional well-being than you have in that room by yourself. And that is very different than all the rest of us who walk around outside of those environments. And, when I think about that, and then I think we have these teenage girls in that kind of environment. That is that threatening, that has stomped out the light of their lives so much that they're there. And so when their eyes are open and they're able to freely move about, they're freely moving about people that could be hazardous to them.
And I think we should mention, and we only have a minute or two left here, is the fact that we talk about copycat suicides in the case. And here is a prime example of three young women, and I'm guessing they used a similar method to attempt to take their lives. And parents should be aware of the fact that kids at that age are very vulnerable, and they will try something that a friend or an acquaintance has tried before.
That's accurate. Copycat suicide is more prevalent among the younger population than it is among adults.
Well, Tamara, again, the website is tamarasutton.com. I always feel so bad that this time goes so quickly, but a very emotional few minutes that we just spent here together with the three of us.
I'd agree. Thank you so much, though, Tamara, for sharing your heart and your soul. Same thing for you, Terry. And that emotional minutes, for me, are expressions of people's soul, their very being, as opposed to kind of sitting around talking about all the other stuff that we talk about today. So thank you for that vulnerability.
And again, Tamara, people can talk to you in more length or blog to you at tamarasutton.com. Is that correct?
Yes, Terry. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And our best to Chuck as well.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we will we'll talk to you next week, and we'll be right back with our second segment here on the Suicide Prevention Show here on 1360 WLBK.